and see if we can get this budget taken care of this evening.
Okay.
But thank you for asking. If we can't get it taken care of, we may need to have a special meeting because the budget, is, we all know, has to be done by November 1st. But we should continue to forge ahead, see if we can get this item on the agenda passed. And while we take a quick breath here for the Boy Scouts, what we're really looking at is to try to make sure that we have an appropriate level of income and spending for the city to carry out all the services that the city needs to provide for the citizens of the community. And we spent almost all summer working on the budgets and trying to make sure that everything was in place so that we don't have shortfalls, but so that we have an appropriate ending balance in our piggy bank. And so this may look like it's long and drawn out. It is long and drawn out, but it's a very important thing for you folks and certainly for your parents. So we want to try to make sure that we get it right. Now, with that said, other comments or questions? Are there any miscellaneous amendments to the budget that need to be taken care of as we move further along in this process?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
We did not vote on the clerk treasurer's budget. It has been revised, and for a total right now of an increase of $487,000. I would like to recommend that we reduce that further by $97,416. That's a number that I received from the clerk treasurer. That would be a reduction in all line items associated with the new employee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the clerk treasurer's budget in regards to the new employee. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll call for the question on the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Are there other amendments that anyone would like to bring forward at this point in time? If no one else has other amendments, I'd like to make a couple of amendments to the clerk treasurer's budget also. I would move that we reduce line item legal fees, the accounts 4340000, from $25,000 to $0. This is in light of the fact this is a 400% increase in the request for last year. Secondly, I want to amend it to reduce the line item consulting fees. The account is $43,400 from $80,600 to $0. This is in light of the fact this request was 61% above last year's budget and nearly $65,000 more that was actually spent by the prior clerk treasurer in 2015. If approved by vote of the council of the city, this would represent a decrease in the budget of the clerk treasurer of a little over $105,000.
Second.
Mr. President?
Yes.
And are you working off the revised budget she presented or the original?
Working off the original budget.
Okay, thank you.
We never did accept the revised budget, so I think we need to work off the original budget. Was there any further discussion on this item?
Could you refresh what the original budget was, since I quoted a revised budget?
Let's see here. I only copied a couple pages out of.
I have it if you need it.
Yeah, I do. I only copied 2 pages out of. The original budget total was $827,557. It was an 82% increase over the prior year's budget. Is there any further discussion?
Second.
Being Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Any other amendments to budget?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I don't know if I have support for this, and frankly, I don't care. This is a promise that I made to my constituents that I would not raise the tax rate above what the rate was last year, other than the GO bonds that we approved earlier in the year. So I'm making a motion that we amend the budget to make the redevelopment bond fund .0440. Is that correct, Kurt? Did I do that right?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. The rate.
0.0440.
Are you done?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion to amend?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay, Sue, so you made a promise to your constituents not to raise the rate above where it was last year. I thought we were coming down this year.
That would be the general tax rate, and then we added 6.5 cents roughly for the levy appeal.
So you're talking about the rate before the levy appeal was your promise?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Anyone else have comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you vote?
No.
Aye, we need a show of hands.
I'm not following what you just were talking about. That's
Then we need discussion.
okay.
Right.
May I?
Well, hold on a second. I'm going to just say we didn't hear the vote. We'll have discussion further. Bill, what was your...
I just got lost. I probably have a lot of company here.
Yes,
But
guarantee that.
can you just re-summarize? Is this the minus 1 cent, or is this?
Let me try to bring it to you in another angle. In 2015, our city rate was 0.7007.
Right.
At the end of 2015, we approved a tax rate of approximately 7,700-ish. We also approved a levy appeal, which added 0.675 to that rate. And then with other cum cap development, West Clay debt, 0.0674. That made our rate this year, 0.8356.
Right. See that?
Okay? So when you back out the 0.0675
Okay.
and add on the 0.0194 for the GO bonds, the general allocation bonds that we all approved in February?
27th.
That's, not that you know the date. That is approximately the 1 cent reduction.
Okay.
Does that
And
help?
that's what you were proposing?
And that's what I was proposing, that we amend the budget so that the redevelopment bond fund is at 0.0440 because of the way Kurt is trying to maximize or hopefully get as much COIT as possible. He said that's the simplest way to do it, and he also identified there's some risk with that, that the rate may float a bit based on assessed value.
Okay.
So in that, we save the taxpayers approximately $600,000, and we lose about $300,000 in COIT. In offsetting years, like $600,000 in property tax in year one, COIT in the following year because of the lag.
Yeah, that's a fair way to describe it.
God bless you, Kurt. Thank you. I'll take that as high praise. Does that help?
Yeah.
One last question. What does that do to our ending balance again for, say, through 2020?
Well, over that number of years, the loss would be the $300,000 that Councilor Finkham just identified. And because the COA distribution formula builds on itself year after year, there would be further losses, but they would diminish. So between $400,000 and $500,000 over the next several years.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to ask Councilor Finkham, it would be your intent then to keep this rate through the next 3 years, though? Is that, or were you just here
This year, because there's so many other things that can change next year. I mean, your fiscal plan is going to change based on expenses and everything else, so I'm not going to commit to that.
Okay.
Ideally, yes, I would like to see a modest
Because
rate.
if we do
This is
this,
year that I said I wasn't going to raise taxes.
okay.
So that's what I'm concerned about. We added those GO bonds with eyes wide open at what that would do to adding .019 to the rate. But I said I want to keep the base rate the same plus this. I'm fine with dealing these fiscal projections to me are just that, projections, and we make other change assumptions. We just cut out a couple $100,000 of the clerk treasurer's budget. That's going to change the net on 2020 as well. So, if you follow this through, so I'm looking at 1 year and 1 year only.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Mr. President, just, Mr. Coonrod, when we spoke earlier today, the fiscal plan did not have the clerk treasurer's budget in it. Does this new October one, because I don't have do you remember?
Yes, when the September 16th revision was prepared, we didn't have the clerk treasurer's budget.
But it is in the
It is in the
October
one
now.
you've got in front of you now.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify since that was a point made.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Ryder.
now in the fiscal plan, you have built in a hopeful future bond. So in here, is that hopeful future bond still in here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's another thing that we have not passed, which could affect this.
That's right. That is actually not in the budget ordinance as an
Right,
appropriation.
but it's in the plan.
In the plan as an expenditure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How much of a bond is that?
Remains to be seen. The annual payments projected vary from year to year, roughly $4 million a year.
Probably support $7 to $8 million at current interest rates. It depends how the bond is structured, the length of the bond. None of these things have been worked out yet. But it provides cash flow for that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Whether the bond is non-taxable or taxable, all these things will impact the exact rate and cost. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. I was going to ask, do you have anything further you want to say in relation to what you're looking to have happen versus what has been proposed?
I think that I respect Councilor Finkham and what she's told her constituents. At the same time, I think anytime we can tax $600,000 and get $900,000, that's a good decision for our taxpayers.
Thank you.
How are we getting 900,000? We were losing 300 in COA, saving 300 net, correct?
Well, I just inverse it. I said anytime we can tax $600,000 and get 50% added to it, that's a good deal for our taxpayers. In other words, if I gave you $1 and somehow in handing it over, it magically became $1.50, and that's in essence what we're talking about. That's a good deal for you.
Mr. President, you missed your calling sales and PR. I got to give you credit. But you're taxing the taxpayers the $600,000. So, I mean, yeah, they're getting a return, I guess, but we're still taxing them $600,000. So I think we'll leave that up to them.
Sue, I gave the mayor an opportunity to make one last comment. Do you want to make one last comment for your...
No, I think I've papered and emailed everybody enough with 3 different plans, but one, I just want to say thank you for entertaining the last minute, both Kurt and the mayor and my co-councilors for entertaining the last minute discussion on it. This is what I value about this council and our working relationship with the mayor's office is that we can have these discussions. They're not negative. We see things differently, all 8 of us, and I really appreciate that. So however this nets out, I'm fine with it, but I appreciate the discussion. Sort of be a Debbie Downer and recommended.
I would echo that.
But thank you.
Okay. So, okay.
Sure.
So your proposal was the 1 cent less than the full levy. Is that correct? And that, so in 2023 on the fiscal plan, that would leave us $6 million plus in excess operating costs off of this.
It would be that projection. Of course, there have been other
Okay.
changes, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I'm knowing what I'm voting on here, so I get that. And that makes sense to me. And I'm not sure, I'd like to offer an amendment. I'm not sure if I have votes on this either, but I wanted to beg you to give us a new line item in the budget for, I guess it wouldn't be a line item, a new page for the Historic Preservation Fund, and that we could put $75,000 in there for.
I had told Carol previously, not right before we knew how she was going to vote in that vote, that I would agree to the $75,000. I think it's important. We have very few homes in Carmel and buildings that can be preserved, and this is a modest amount that can be used to move homes. And I'm comfortable with it in the afterthought. Where do we put it was a question. And I think we have an understanding that the redevelopment projects have to go on schedule. And so at some point there has to be a drop dead. If it's not been moved, it will be raised. But I think we can get all the departments working together to make certain that can happen. So yes, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
And I would add that usually, if it's a moving project, that a temporary location is always an alternative until the...
I'll beat you back here.
Well, I was thinking of the Peel House, and, you know, it's just one of the tools we have to get things done.
Mr. President, can we handle these separately? Because we have an amendment that we have a
If
motion
my
and a
motion
second
is
for.
still on the floor at this
It is.
point, I withdraw it so we can address this, and then I'll bring it back. How's that?
I think that's appropriate. So,
No. Who's got the second on this?
I seconded
Okay,
yours.
you're
I'll
okay
withdraw.
with withdrawing that?
okay, so
We're free to move.
Sue's amendment is withdrawn temporarily. You've got an amendment on the floor. We need a second for your amendment. And then that's basically you're asking the mayor to increase the budget by $75,000. It is up to him because we cannot raise the budget. We can lower it, but we cannot raise it. It's up to the mayor to do it.
If he doesn't say yes, we can't even vote on it.
I would second that.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to ask the mayor to raise the budget by $75,000 in favor of a fund in the Historic Preservation Commission. Mr. Mayor, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so the mayor's indicated it's okay with him. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Mr. President, so for clarification, though, we have not established how that fund will be managed? That will come later?
No, by ordinance, it's the Preservation Commission is the one who manages that, and that's used, most likely at this point would be used for projects. Most of our operating expenses are already in the Department of Community Services.
Okay, and do the time frames that we previously discussed still apply to this, to secure the home, to find financing, to move it, to find a lot, all of those issues before the dollars are spent?
Oh, well, it'll all be by contract.
Okay.
I mean, it'll all be in writing, and
I just want to make
very
sure we're
much
going
like
to
the
follow that
CRC.
timeline.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, Sue.
Mr. Mayor, is there perhaps, should we do a an additional appropriation out of this year's budget to handle what Carol wants because of this house is before us now versus doing it really wonky with the 2017 budget?
We could do that. We can go ahead and leave it in the budget, and we know it's the appropriate in
I mean, can we just next time have...
in January as well, if we've done a special appropriation during 2016.
Well, this particular project was one that I was asking for, I'd already asked for a special appropriation that I thought was going to be an add-on here, but found that it needed, due to public hearing requirements, has to be in the next meeting.
So we're talking two different appropriations. One will be on the next meeting, and then you're asking one for 2017.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this the best way to handle this?
I don't see one way having a tremendous preference over the other. All the departments are working together to get this house moved, and we're not going to spend more money than we need to. We could cover it out of fund and reimburse them as well next year. I mean, that's a possibility as well, if we have any balances in other accounts.
Most of these numbers were best estimates, and, we'll see how the contract negotiations go.
Mr. Mayor, I would just ask the question from the standpoint of, you mentioned that these projects have a pretty finite timeline through the CRC.
Yes.
And so will we be able to get the dollars in place in an appropriate amount of time for this particular project that it doesn't hold up the CRC?
Yes, I'm comfortable we can put it in the 2017 budget. By the time a special appropriation would be done, would be in mid-November. It's just not going to make any difference.
Okay.
But I don't believe we can bid projects until we have the cash in the bank, right?
We can bid it based on other appropriations that could be transferred. It's the awarding of the bid that's the key, not the bidding of the project. So if we just hold off awarding it to January 2nd, you're fine.
But I believe they were going to start demolition in November. Is that right, Mike?
Well, we'd have to issue the permit for that to happen, and I don't think that's the plan at this point. Corey's here. Corey?
Yeah, but that would hold up the project.
Yeah.
Glad you could make it, Corey.
Corey Meyer with the CRC. The project is located at Monon in Maine, and the developer was planning on demolishing before the end of the year. I do know that they have not filed for their permits, so the mayor is correct that that approval has not happened yet, but they are on schedule to begin. Now, there are several houses on that property that need to be demolished, and I'm not sure the sequence of which they were planning on doing that work.
Okay. All right.
Corey, we have money that could cover this in redevelopment and be reimbursed next year if necessary.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Corey. Thank you very much. And I'll just add one last thing. Carolyn, you and I have talked about this, and it's very important for me and I think the rest of the council to know if these are going to be grants or if they're going to be low-interest loans, and if there are low-interest loans, who's going to pay them back and how are they going to be paid back. So as soon as we can get that information, that would be helpful. So, all right.
Well, I'm hoping you can help us with that.
If there's no further discussion, we'll call a question. All those in favor?
This is on that.
Yeah, on the $75,000. If there's no further comment or question, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes. Would you like to make a motion?
I would. I move that we amend the redevelopment bond fund rate from .0540 to .0440 so that the rate can go down approximately 1 cent as presented in the revised October 17, 2016 draft of the general fund.
Can I second that?
Do we have a second? Did we get a second?
I think she did.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Are we ready to vote? There's no further discussion. All those in favor, by show of hands, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, by a show of hands, please signify by raising their hand. I think it passed 4-3. All right. Then we now have the amended ordinance on which to vote. Is there any further discussion on the amended ordinance? Hearing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. So we have the budget establishing the appropriations set for 2017. Moving now to the second reading of Ordinance D 2326-16, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Carmel, Indiana, fixing salaries of appointed officers and employees of the City of Carmel, Indiana, for the year 2017. The sponsors are Councilors Carter, Worrell, and Schleif. It's returning from the Finance, Utilities, and Rules Committee. The synopsis is that this establishes the 2017 maximum salaries for employees of the executive branch. Is there discussion?
Mr. President?
Yes.
This was discussed in the Finance Committee extensively for each section. There were no changes. It was voted on to send it back to full committee with a positive recommendation and a 3-0 vote. So I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this. Any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would just like to make a statement since we talked quite a bit about the 40-hour work week. So what I would like to say is it just goes without saying that I appreciate the City of Carmel employees, and I completely acknowledge that they work hard and serve the city well. As a city councilor, I've come to rely heavily on those people working in City Hall, as well as the utility department and street departments. Without them, I would be unable to serve my constituents. They help me obtain information I need to solve problems, and then they are critically involved in helping me to execute a fix. To them, I am grateful, and I'm also grateful to our public safety officials as well, police and fire. Because of a long-standing tradition in Carmel to pay well and attract superior individuals, our workforce is stable and complaints are minimal. I've experienced that myself. The total compensation package for city employees is above average, and I support keeping it there. Before us tonight is an ordinance calling for pay increases to our employees that are greater than the cost of living. I want to acknowledge a balanced budget has been developed that not only provides for the necessary infrastructure improvements and city services, but also clearly includes these raises ranging from 2.80 to 5.71 for non-directors and 5.8% to 17.9% for directors. This ordinance does not include elected officials. Based on the presentation during the budget workshops, logical principles were offered relying on data provided by a consultant and how employees were classified into salary grades, each grade having multiple steps, and Carmel choosing to use the midpoint as a maximum from the salary study. When I ran for this position, I promised to fairly consider all ideas, regardless of who proposed it, and whenever possible to seek out objective data in order to formulate my support or objection. So in this case, I was happy and delighted that objective data existed to help support the need for employee raises. However, when doing our due diligence with the consultant at the Finance Committee meeting, it was unfortunate that his answer to one simple question caused more complicated questions. I learned the data I was relying on was based on a 40-hour work week, and Carmel employees work 37.5 hours per week. That is a difference of 17 days per year, and it seemed natural to begin looking at a 40-hour work week in exchange for what we believe to be a significant raise. Since committee, I have sought out department directors and employees to receive their feedback. I see some of them here who were nice enough to speak to me without raising their voice. And because I began to hear that maybe there was an unintended consequence and that the 40-hour work week was not being well received. So what I've learned is there are pros and there are cons to a 40-hour work week, and I agree that I don't have enough information to make this change effective January 1, 2017. So regardless of what I said to the media after our Finance Committee meeting, it is now my intention that we consider a 40-hour work week. There is now an ordinance that will come before us later tonight, but I believe we need to study it. And if warranted, I would move for a 40-hour work week, only if warranted. Thank you. In 2018.
Thank you, Ed.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
wouldn't have commented on it right now, but he just laid right into it. I'm not on the committee, but was president of the committee. And afterwards, after talking to some department heads and employees alike, we started working on the idea of if it passed, it would not take effect until January 1 of 18. That was with the purpose that it could be studied more. We would find out, department heads could look at what it would take to implement it, and it wouldn't put everybody in a panic. And it's something, anything the council does, the council can undo. So there weren't enough answers. So I think we have, the discussions all week were not to do it before. I would not support it at all if it wasn't until January 1 of 18, so that we could look at it in more, it just needs a lot of studying. Because after talking to department heads, they were talking about scheduling and crews, and I mean, there's a lot to look at, and plus people would have to readjust their lives.
Other council comments? I would just take a moment to say that I voted against adding this on from the standpoint of...
Sorry.
I understand.
Stab me.
But the 40 hours is something that I don't want to rush into. I don't want to be bound to a hard and fast time of a year from this January 1st. And consequently, I agree with Kevin. It needs a lot more study. It is, as who was it said, it's a pretty thin pancake that only has one side, and there's obviously two sides to this. And rest assured, as far as the employees of the city are concerned, the taxpayers of the city, that we'll put the time and effort into finding the very best solution for this that we can, and we want to try to make sure that we do the best job we can. So with that said, anything else? Call for the question then. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. And now we're at 11F, the second reading of Ordinance D 23-2716, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Carmel, Indiana, fixing salaries of appointed officers and employees of the Clerk Treasurer, City of Carmel, Indiana, for the year 2017. The sponsors are Councilors Finkham, Schleif, and Kimball. This returns from the Finance, Utilities, and Rules Committee. The synopsis is that this ordinance sets biweekly maximum salary for employees in the Clerk Treasurer's office. Is there discussion?
Mr. President?
Yes.
We reviewed this in committee as well and voted 3-0 to send it back with a positive recommendation. However, I would like to move that we amend this on line 20. The dates were left blank. So it needs to say December 17th, 2016, and continuing until December 15th, 2017.
Is there a second to the amendment? It's been moved and seconded that we amend the dates, or add in the dates. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the question on the amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. On to the amended ordinance.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance With the amendment, this is ordinance D 232716. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 11G, the second reading of ordinance D 2328-16, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Carmel, Indiana, fixing salaries of elected officials of the City of Carmel, Indiana for the year 2017. Sponsors are Councilors Carter, Worrell, and Schleif. This is returning from the Finance, Utilities, and Rules Committee. Any discussion?
Mr. President?
Yes.
This was reviewed in Finance Committee, and it comes back amended so that all elected officials have a 2% raise for cost of living. And that was voted on a 3-0 vote.
Discussion.
Mr. President, I move that we amend D2328 by substituting in whole version A. And I don't see a date on the bottom, but ordinance D232816 version A, I recommend we substitute that in whole. And for the record, that would be, hang on, I'm going to read this into the record. I want to make sure I have this right. The Mayor, 501942, Judge, 474606, Clerk Treasurer, 410574, and Common Council, 67659.
All right. Discussion.
I need a second. Was that a second?
Been moved
Thank
and
you.
seconded. Now discussion. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So let me
Sure.
give you that.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you. I'd like to further amend the ordinance D 232816 by moving that the 2017 salary of the City Council be set at $19,853 rather than at the amount of $22,167 recommended in the salary study. This represents the amount that would be the council salary if, unlike the rest of the elected officials and the employees of the city, the council had received each year the annual COLA and the adjustments that our employees received. While not part of my motion, I recommend that the council receive in coming years the same COLA and salary adjustments on average that our employees receive.
Was that a motion?
It was.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that...
I have the gavel.
Oh, I'm sorry, you do. That's right.
Any discussion on the motion? Power goes to my head.
This is a motion to amend what we've just done.
Correct, we amended it once, and now he's offered another amendment to further amend it. And would you just restate, or I can hand this, that the city council be set at $19,853. Did you do that for the maximum biweekly salary? Do you have that rate? We can figure it out. $19,853. Any discussion?
I'm going to vote against the amendment with all due respect for a variety of reasons. Many of those, or one of them significantly, I am like Sue Finkham. I've already made some promises to my constituents. And while some have suggested that it's okay to change my mind, that's just not how I want to operate. So I'm going to oppose this amendment, and I do not believe we should take an increase.
Okay.
Further discussion? Carol?
And I'll take the other side. We've, half of us were on the council when we were not taking raises and gave raises, COLA raises to everybody else. And my personal feeling is that we ought to have raises for good work and so forth. But if we're going to be doing this, it needs to be fair. And that means that the what Ron is proposing is basically just catching us up to everyone else, and that's sort of the whole idea of having this salary study done, is to try and make sure everything is fair. So from fairness standpoint, I'm going to be voting for this amendment because I think probably what we did in the last council was a mistake, and we should have done it a different way instead of cutting our own salaries or not approving our own raises. So this is more of just catching up for fairness' sake. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Ryder.
I'm sorry, Madam President. I did serve at the same time as you guys during the periods when we were not taking the 2% COLA. And again, we're talking about a hefty salary. It was about $200 or $300 a year, I think, would have been an increase. So I do agree that, I mean, just for future councils even, it is merely catching it up. I oppose the 28% that was recommended by the study, but it is fair to get the COLA that was not done. So I will support it.
Madam President. I voted in favor of just a 2% across the board raise for all elected officials, and I do think it is okay to change my mind. There's a lot that has come up in the past week, and even if I look over the course of a year, I've changed my mind about a lot of different things that I thought I was pretty firm about. And a lot of my opposition to a raise for the council was, I thought, I'm a first-year counselor, and it's a lot of money, and I still, to this day, couldn't vote for a 28% raise. However, I do think it is a correct action to make up for the lack of a cost of living raise. Our counselors do put in a lot of time. We sure put in a lot more time than I ever thought we would. It's so much more than 2 meetings a month, and we meet a lot, discuss a lot in between, so I am in favor.
Any further discussion?
Can I have one more bite?
Yes, absolutely.
Just to my colleagues, I appreciate all of your positions, but I would ask that we consider the optics. We agreed in the committee meeting, and I thought we were all in agreement that 2% across the board was the right thing to do. And I know some things happened over the last week, but I would just ask you to consider the appearance to our constituents of taking this action now after the things we said last Monday. This is my last effort.
Bruce? All right, with no further discussion, I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. President?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 11H, the second reading of ordinance D 2329-16, an ordinance of the Common Council.
Mr. President, I think that was a voting amendment, not the main motion.
Sorry.
Thank you. Now that we have amended that ordinance, see what happens when you pass me the gavel.
Move to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilor Schleif and a second by Councilor Campbell. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Motion carries finally. It's getting long.
Can I have this back now?
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry. I apologize.